To start with the session now. May I invite all the speakers to please join us on the dais, please. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the session on making India a global manufacturing hub in renewable energy. To begin the session, I'm going to invite Mr. Ashwani Kumar, Chief Executive Officer, Suzlon Group. The Minister will be joining us virtually, and so don't be surprised if you suddenly see him on the screen. He will be with us throughout the session. He's had to suddenly travel out of station, and that's why this is happening. Thank you. So may I invite you, sir, to please come and give your welcome address and set the context.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session on making India the global manufacturing hub. So let me just give a brief introduction of how the renewable energy journey started in India. Of course, it was by our visionary chairman, who was not only founder of Suzlon, but maybe considered a founder of renewable energy in India, Mr. Tulsi Tanti, who started this journey of manufacturing wind turbines in India. But one thing he was very sure of right from late 90s when we started developing manufacturing, that we do not have to only make wind turbines and start importing critical components, but we have to make a full ecosystem of the components here. And even when the technology of those components was not available in India, he actually went ahead and bought some of the companies which had critical technology and made them invest in India. That ecosystem of wind is already started bearing fruits. In the last few years, when India was not doing too well on the wind energy installations in India, the component exports as well as the turbine exports from India had already started taking shape. We at Suzlon and our subsidiaries have not only supplied turbines of over 6 gigawatts to many countries, including developed countries like USA, Canada, Australia, Brazil, others, but also our components continue to be supplied even today to these countries. The important part in global manufacturing was, one was the supply chain, which has to be developed in India. The second, in the wind, compared to, let's say, comparable story like solar, the supply chain is a pretty complicated, since there are almost 2,000 items that go into it. So not only it was good as a technology development in India, it was also important to develop all these MSME industries, which came up to supply these parts to Indian market as well as to global markets. We are very, very proud to say that many of them are using our R&D centers. They are using our technology that we have given them, we have helped them build, and are not only developing turbines for India, but also giving even 3 megawatt, 4 megawatt, even the turbines that have not come to India, supplying components of that and keeping the Indian story intact. In terms of government support, I think so wind has always been ahead in the terms of capacities, and therefore presently there is no direct PLI, though there has always been a support for the wind industry in terms of export and SEZ and other policies that we have enjoyed. But I think so there is time now for the government to think about making India as a manufacturing hub, especially for wind components, which will help not only various MSMEs that have come here, but also change some of the policies in terms of the SEZ as well as the domestic tariff, so that all these component manufacturers basically become a good piece in our value chain, as well as create thousands of jobs. That's all I needed to say, and I welcome you again to this session.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. May I now invite Mr. Indu Shekhar Chaturvedi, Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, to give his special address, please.
Distinguished dignitaries on the dais, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. So I've spoken in the morning on more or less the same issues, so please forgive me if I am a little repetitive. So the topic is making India a global manufacturing hub in RE. So I'll mainly talk about the thrust in solar manufacturing, which the government has been emphasizing upon. And we have put in place a number of policy interventions to facilitate domestic manufacturing. They include the approved list of models and manufacturers, the basic customs duty, which was made effective from 1st April 2022, and the requirement of domestically produced cells and modules in government schemes like Solar Rooftop and Kusum. So these policy interventions are beginning to show effect, and our module manufacturing capacity has more than doubled in, say, last about 1.5 years, from 8 gigawatt to 20 gigawatt. The cell capacity has not gone up as much as the module manufacturing capacity, but it has shown improvement. But the good thing is that the first tranche of the PLI, in which awards were made in last November and December, I think the projects are on way. One of the projects has made very good progress, the others are also on track. And if everything goes well, those capacities should be commissioned within a period of 3 years from December last. And we expect a similar response to PLI-2. The total amount involved in the two PLI tranches is about $3 billion US. And the capacities we are looking at are roughly 74 gigawatt of modules, and then other components also. About 29 gigawatt would be integrated capacities in PLI-2. In PLI-1, it was 8.7 gigawatt, so that makes it a total of 38 gigawatt. So the total capacities we are looking at is about between 90 to 100 gigawatt of annual production of modules by, say, 2026. And that should be good enough not only to cater to our domestic requirements, but also to take care of, but also to have something left over for exports. So one of the sub-themes today is zero defect, zero effect. So we have been insisting on quality. The schemes have inbuilt provision for rewarding high efficiencies, local value addition, etc. And we hope to see world-class manufacturing facilities and high-quality modules being produced in India. Now, this is as far as the PLI scheme goes, and the PLI for solar manufacturing. So I think solar manufacturing is on track. That is one thing we can say confidently. There has been some mismatch between demand and supply, but then if you intervene in the markets in such a big way as we have done in the solar manufacturing area, there are bound to be some wrinkles, some stresses here and there, and that is what we are seeing in the solar area. There are high prices which are sometimes attributed to the shortage of domestic supplies, but the reality is not that simple. I think there's also a contribution of high prices across the globe in solar equipment. But we will try to put in place some measures which ease these tensions in the next few months. We are thinking of something, and let us. I hope that that will come through. Wind manufacturing is good in India. It is, I think it's in a healthy condition. We produce about 80 to 85% of our requirements domestically, and the major players have their manufacturing facilities in India. And with the program we have for offshore wind installations, 37 gigawatt of bids to be awarded by 2030. I think if that goes as per plans, we also hope to see some offshore wind turbines being manufactured in India. And manufacturers have also already expressed interest in that. So wind and solar, both, I think manufacturing facilities are going to become strong. This is as per the policy of the government, and this is largely because of the policy of the government. The other thing I wanted to talk about was hydrogen. So the way hydrogen mission is envisaged, there are enabling provisions for direct support to initial projects for green hydrogen production and for initial capacities for electrolyzer production. As I said in the morning, we want to encourage electrolyzer production in India, and we don't want to end up the way we ended in solar module manufacturing, with being dependent on one country or a group of countries. And I think it would not be wrong to say that in all sub-areas of renewable energy where we have seen success, the initial projects have been supported by the government through subsidy, be it solar, be it wind. And I think that's the case for hydrogen also. If we create domestic demand, and if that leads to scaling up of hydrogen production and therefore a lowering of cost, then exports become possible and easier. So we are looking at that also, and hopefully the mission will come through in a few days' time, in a few months' time, or in a few days' time, a couple of months, say. And once we start implementing it, all these provisions will come into effect. One of the sub-theme is promotion of MSMEs and ancillaries. So we have taken care in the PLI dispensation to have something for the smaller players also, and therefore the scheme guidelines which have been published include baskets, separate baskets for with earmarked funds. We have a basket for the largest group is the integrated facilities, and then cells plus modules, and wafers plus cells plus modules. So thinking there was to ensure that the smaller players also, units which produce, say, cells and modules also, cells and modules only, are also able to take advantage of the PLI. All the policy interventions we have done, whether it is domestic content requirement, whether it is PLI, the ease of doing business issues are a regular feature. We have to deal with them on a regular basis, and because RE is an evolving area still, and new developments take place every day, and installations are seeing a very rapid increase in India, the problems are also new every day. So we have to be nimble in that, and we have to address them on a day-to-day basis. So I think I'll end my intervention here. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the pleasure and honor to invite Mr. Piyush Goyal, Minister of Commerce and Industry, Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution and Textiles, Government of India, to address us as the guest of honor for today's session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam. Distinguished guests on the dais, off the dais, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure to be addressing the CII third edition of Aatmanirbhar Bharat in renewable energy, which ideally I would have loved to be there, loved to meet all the participants, but unfortunately I'm traveling and not able to be with you. But I'm grateful to CII for allowing me to participate through the video conference. In any way, we've spent 2 years through VCs, and it gives us a chance to engage with each other, even with distance not becoming a barrier. Today is a very auspicious day. It's Holi Ashtami. We are in the festival season, and I pray and wish the best for all of you and your families. I was listening to the Secretary Renewable Energy, and I do fully agree that ultimately we'll have to look at energy security as an integral part of national security. For that matter, in the current context of the geopolitical problems that the world is facing, it's economic security. And nations are today suffering because of a geopolitical problem in a third country or in a country where you are not at all a player at all, but you land up first suffering as an economy, and which in some sense also has ramifications on our national security. And therefore, I'm delighted that CII continues to persevere and have this dialogue with the Indian industry to see how we can become self-sufficient. We are not dependent on other countries for our machinery, for our inputs, and how sustainability can also be supported through renewable energy. So we have a twin advantage, sustainability and energy or economic security through the medium of international cooperation and the learnings that we have from making India an Aatmanirbhar Bharat, a fully integrated ecosystem in renewable energy, which will have huge benefit for the country. In the past, we've had high dependency on imports, both of machinery, equipment required for the renewable energy sector, or even for our traditional power sources. And we've also had a lot of dependency on imports in products like oil or coking coal, which continue to the day. Prices of these products have been prone to geopolitics, to the uncertainties that the world has faced. We all know how commodity prices have had huge swings many times in the past. COVID taught us a big lesson that ultimately we'll have to be self-sufficient also in the sources of equipment and machinery for the energy sector. When we had a huge supply chain disruption and many of our projects in the renewable energy sector suffered significantly. I know that once upon a time, there was significant resistance to manufacture in India, more so because the volumes were small and it was uneconomical to manufacture in India. In fact, some of the manufacturers have actually suffered, even though they were enthusiastic to come into renewable energy equipment manufacturing. The volumes did not justify or help them become competitive. And we've landed up with, I think, many years of decline in manufacturing in the past. I'm happy that the renewable energy sector now is rejuvenating itself, also in equipment manufacturing, where the entire supply chain will be in our control. In wind energy, we are already the in a way, the world leaders for many, many years now, probably a decade. But in solar energy, I can clearly see that the efforts that the Ministry of Renewable Energy has made and the production linked incentive scheme, which is going to incentivize domestic manufacturing, will help us become self-sufficient. Actually, will help us become suppliers to the world of solar power equipment, just like we are supplying wind energy equipment to many parts of the world. I'd only like to draw a parallel to the pharma industry. If you recall, there was a time where most of the key starting materials, the KSMs or the APIs, were made in India. But some countries, particularly our northern neighbor, almost kind of took away the entire industry by making it very, very competitive, giving all sorts of sobs to that industry, inviting our own Indian companies to manufacture in their geography, and have today become leading suppliers of equipment in the renewable energy space. We should not allow a situation like that to happen in our renewable energy sector and maintain the entire supply chain in India to the best of our ability. There's also an analogy from the agriculture sector which we can draw. We've seen the high volatility of global food prices in the last few years. But because we were Aatmanirbhar, we were self-sufficient largely in most of our agri products, our prices have been relatively stable compared to other countries. Of course, we are still import dependent on pulses, on oil seeds, many edible oils, and have suffered the consequences of high prices, both in our domestic market and also in terms of the inflationary pressures that has caused us and has affected our national economy. Therefore, it's important to build this sector right from the stage of equipment until innovation and new technologies so that we can actually lead the world rather than be dependent on other countries. The targets that have been set by the Renewable Energy Ministry and which the Honorable Prime Minister has announced at Glasgow are indeed overwhelming, and the entire world is looking up to India to lead the renewable energy sector. The fact that we are planning to have 500 gigawatt of clean energy, renewable energy sources by 2030 is truly the envy of the world. And this gives us the kind of market size which should encourage our investors, our manufacturers to set up more factories, to invest more in India, and clearly makes a great business case for Aatmanirbharta. The second tranche of production-linked incentives on PV cells, various incentives for wind or hydroelectric industry, the solar-powered villages that we are now going to emulate, the Modhera model, what was recently launched or inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister at Modhera, our Asia's largest bio-CNG plant in Indore, again recently dedicated to the nation by the Honorable Prime Minister. All of these are good signs for local manufacturing in the renewable energy sector, will help us create jobs, give a fillip to economic growth, and also make our economy more resilient, and we can become actually a good source of equipment when other countries who are trying to integrate in their global value chains, trusted partners. Because India, with its rule of law, with a strong focus on transparency, stable and predictable policy, is today earning itself the name and the trust of the world as somebody they can rely on, somebody who does not let down their partners, even in the most trying circumstances. You may recall that we have achieved power for all. But with innovation coming in, we can do a lot more to make it sustainable power flow. And coupled with energy efficiency, I think we have tremendous potential to make a big difference, not only to India's future, but to the world's future, both on sustainability, self-reliance on energy, and the energy security of other countries who are all now facing severe stress and have over the last 2-3 years suffered the consequences of the pandemic and then the war. I think it's a great opportunity, a great timing to protect our industry, to nurture this industry and grow into becoming a world supplier in renewable energy sector. Recycling is also recycling, reuse, re-engineering. The entire circular economy is another area which has been largely unorganized in the past, which if we are all conscious and really bring sustainability at the core of our efforts, we can modernize our recycling sector, we can bring in skills into our recycling processes and really create huge value proposition, whether it's through ship breaking and processing of plastic waste, other waste to energy projects. There's tremendous potential for technology-driven solutions in the area of circular economy, which also we should try and promote and become self-reliant. It can also give us a huge source of energy and save us from environmental hazards and the huge landfills or dumps that we often see. The economic and ecological value of the circular economy is truly phenomenal, and I would urge all the participants to also focus on that. There are 5 pillars of Aatmanirbhar Bharat that I can see: the economy, infrastructure, technology-driven systems, our vibrant democracy and demography, the young population that we have, and the huge demand that India itself can generate as a local market, which in a way will be the foundation to make our costs competitive, give us economies of scale, and make us competitive suppliers for the rest of the world, increasing our exports and foreign earnings. Recently, we've launched the new national education policy. We are looking at Ayushman Bharat in a big way across the country, taking free healthcare to 500 million people. Our Jal Jeevan mission, where we expect to take tap water to every home. All of these are signs that more and more prosperity is going to reach the smallest and remotest villages of the country. I think energy security in smaller geographies at the village level, at localized levels, will be the next big thrust area, which will provide both security and economic opportunity for the renewable energy sector. Therefore, I think there's tremendous potential, and I would suggest we use technology in a bigger way. We train our MSMEs to become quality suppliers of goods and services related to the renewable energy sector. We may use artificial intelligence or Internet of Things in a bigger way, both for smart manufacturing and smart cities, and capitalize on our domestic economy or domestic market for enjoying the fruits of cost competitiveness and economies of scale. Friends, the Indian economy, as is widely recognized, is a bright star in an otherwise gloomy situation. Let's all of us work together to make this our opportunity of a lifetime. My best wishes to all of you and to all the players, all the participants of this very important international conference and exhibition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us and for your address. May I now invite Ms. Gauri Singh, Deputy Director General, International Renewable Energy Agency, for her special address, please.
Distinguished dignitaries on the dais, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a pleasure to be here and to speak about the theme of this very conference, which is about making India Aatmanirbhar and making it into a manufacturing hub of scale, of a global scale. So in fact, what the Honorable Minister said and what we heard from the Secretary have given me a perfect segue into what I wanted to speak. As we all know, currently and the context in which we're speaking actually highlights some of the issues that we've seen come up in the energy space, and all of us know that very well. And if there's one takeaway, then that is to make sure that as we move towards our clean energy future, we don't face the same kind of issues and difficulties. We've seen how increased commodity prices and disruptions in the supply of materials has completely challenged and impacted the global supply chains. And in fact, as we also heard the minister say, the energy security has become pretty much the dominant narrative in whichever event, conference that you go to, or any discussion that we are witnessing today. So from there, I actually want to move to a very important and a very historic milestone where we as a global community have achieved, which is earlier this year, around March, we actually surpassed the 1 terawatt installed capacity of solar. And I think that's a really huge thing that happened. So moving from the gigawatt scale into a terawatt scale. And this shift actually has implications not just in terms of the acceleration of industrial production, but the challenges that will come with it will also be seen and to be faced by this larger ecosystem of industry and R&D. In fact, I think with the challenges will also come many opportunities, which will be around looking at the entire value chain of right from material sciences to product design, to procurement, and also recycling. So it really opens up a very huge segment for both the industrial production, but also for the innovation and R&D moving forward. So at IRENA, we've estimated that by the end of this decade, we should see about 5 terawatts of solar power installed globally. And in the wind, we expect about 3.5 terawatts. And wind, when I talk about wind, I'm talking about both onshore and offshore wind. So, with this expectation that renewable energy will pretty much form almost 65% of the electricity generated, this is going to create a huge shift. I mean, in India, we've just heard the minister and the secretary talk about the 500 gigawatts. But across the world, there are very, very large projects and programs that are coming up to scale up the level of deployment, the pace of deployment in a big way. And we believe that innovation will drive this global energy transformation. So I do want to spend a few minutes talking about innovation, linking it up with the manufacturing and the R&D, because I think that's really going to be the key. So while we've heard about the PLI scheme, which is going to create the pathway for India to become a global manufacturing hub, But what we need to also keep in mind is that because innovation is going to be really very, very important, so policies that will create markets, which we are also seeing by this visibility that the industry has of a long-term market that's being talked about. But equally important is going to be the policies that will drive technology, that will drive innovation, and accelerate the research and development. Now, this, unfortunately, is something, and I know something about the R&D policies. So my sense is that you cannot move into the ambitions that we have as a country for manufacturing without having a R&D and a demonstration and a policy that drives innovation, which is last decade. You cannot. It has to keep pace with these ambitions, because unless there is this very strong connect that happens, I think the full potential of where the country can reach, I think we'll not be able to see that till we address this very important aspect. So in fact, let me try and put some more specificity into what I mean by giving you a few examples. We heard the Secretary talk about electrolyzers, and electrolyzers, as we know, is a very hot topic. Everyone's talking about hydrogen. So at IRENA, we did a study with the European Patent Office to look at how the patents have evolved from 2005 to 2015 and then 2020. And there were about 10,000 patent families that we found which had been put out globally on the electrolysis of water. By 2015, the patent families around the electrolysis of water had surpassed those patents around getting hydrogen from oil or coal and other sources. By 2020, this had doubled. So you can imagine how fast the technologies are evolving. And if I can tell you about another really emerging technology in this spectrum, is this huge importance that you can see from the patents that are filed in photoelectrolysis, which is getting the electrolysis through using light as an energy source. So we also know that Europe and Japan pretty much make up 50% of these patents. And a large number of this patent data that we assessed is looking at increased activity, which will lead to reducing the cost of electrolyzers. So you can imagine how important this entire R&D sector is, because this must go alongside with the manufacturing ambitions that we have. Looking at solar photovoltaics, I'll just take this as another example. We've seen how the costs have gone down by nearly 93% between 2010 and 2020. And what also happened in this space is that currently we know that it's, the cell technology is pretty much dominated by the mono passivated emitter and rear cell, or the PERC, as we know, which has actually led to the module power, which has gone up to about 400 watts and 500 watts, as compared to what we were seeing in 2010 of about 250 to 300 watts. But what has also happened is that the R&D has driven down the losses during cutting of the cell wafers by almost 60%. The use of silver, which is a very important and critical material, has also been reduced by 2/3. And more importantly, and especially for a country like India, because of the higher efficiencies, the requirement of land per megawatt has also gone down from 2.7 hectares per megawatt to about 1.9 in 2020. So, the point that I'm trying to make is that along with manufacturing, there is a need to focus on how to drive and spur the entire innovation spectrum. And government policy has played a very significant role in the past, and it can again, along with the efforts of the industry, create that kind of create an ecosystem that supports it. We all know that for manufacturing hubs to remain competitive, the future supply chains need to be secure, they need to be resilient, and they need to be sustainable. So we know that supply chains, from experience, we know that supply chains need to be able to manage even with short-term or long-term shocks, be able to pivot into using alternative materials, be able to also look at how they need to adjust to the emerging situation and the evolving trends. Now, for all of this to happen, for the resilience of these of the manufacturing and the supply chains, this innovation is going to be the key. And we also know that as we move towards a net zero future, there is a big emphasis on the manufacturing of any renewable energy technology has to also move towards lowering their carbon footprint. We've seen that happen in solar, where it has gone down by almost 40%, and it's slated to go down more. So India must lead not only in the manufacturing, but also in the innovation and commercialization of technologies and manufacturing process that rely on the less use of critical material, be able to deal with more diversified material mix. And this, I would like to submit, will require us to move into and have a paradigm shift in the way the R&D policy of today looks at bringing in collaboration and the technology innovation that has to completely be revamped. So thank you so much, and a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Ms. Singh. May I now invite Mr. S. Manikan, Executive Director and CEO, Radiance Renewables, to give the concluding remarks, please.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, dignitaries, and delegates present here. Thank you, CI and MNRE, for organizing this wonderful event, the third edition. Just a quick background on Radiance. We at Radiance are 100% owned by a fund called the Green Growth Equity Fund, which is the largest climate change fund in Asia. And we are very committed to both Aatmanirbhar Bharat, as we continue to build significant renewable energy capacity in the country to serve our customers in the C&I space. By C&I, I mean commercial industrial segment. Given this vision of Aatmanirbhar that has been laid out by the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, and the consequent growth that we have seen in the RE capacity in the country, there is also an increasing contribution of the renewable energy in the energy basket, which means that therefore there is imperative that India invest in the technology and manufacturing of key components such as solar modules, and I would say even more so, backward integrate right up to the polysilicon stage. I do share the comments made by the Honorable Minister here about even going to the next level of manufacturing equipment. I think all of us have seen the effects of the pandemic on the global supply chain. It has disrupted the auto industry so badly that you place a car and it takes you 6 months to get a car, which was not the case earlier. However, the Indian industry in the solar module manufacturing continues to be dependent as on today on imports of key inputs such as wafers and cells, which are largely controlled and dominated by incumbent global players, therefore impacting the self-reliance of this vital product supply chain. While the PLI scheme for module manufacturing is a welcome move in the right direction, the interim transition requires adequate domestic capacity and supply of high-rated modules at affordable pricing, which is currently a challenge. It is therefore important to address this transition if we need to maintain the pace of solar projects development in the country, given the enhanced renewable energy targets that has been set forth by India. One of these sanguine measures perhaps may be an interim reduction in import duty on solar cells, which will provide much needed immediate relief to the domestic industry until such time manufacturing under the PLI scheme is fully functional. This is just a suggestion. I understand it has got other implications in terms of commitments made to the manufacturers, but I think right now the domestic module manufacturers are reeling under tremendous stress of being able to fill their capacity on the production line. Further, I would sort of echo the sentiments and the comments made by Ms. Gauri Singh just now, that the industry needs to invest in technology and R&D and work with the best academic institutions to lead from the front in quality, innovation, and technology to maintain competitiveness. Further, I would say that the Indian capital goods industry needs to also pick up the slack in manufacturing of machinery for the industry, since most of the equipment is currently imported. While there is a lot of catch-up for the Indian industry to do for meeting the aspirations that has been set out for India, I am very confident that the Indian entrepreneurs can step up to this challenge and can rise to the occasion as they have demonstrated time and again in the past. There were some very interesting comments that were made by all my distinguished panelists here, starting with Mr. Ashwini Kumar, the CEO of Suzlon Group, who made some very interesting comments on the wind industry and the components that they are currently, 85% of the wind component is almost indigenized. So there is less reliance on the wind industry compared to the solar industry. I also sort of was happy to hear the views of Mr. Indu Shekhar Chaturvedi, Secretary MNRE. He made some very interesting points. I think one was on the ALMM and the policy interventions that the government has done to support the domestic industry, which is a very welcome move. Although the module capacity today is only around 20 gigawatts, the expectation is that this will rise to 90 gigawatts by 2026, and that would be a really welcome move. There is a lot of capital that has been put in by the government to support the PLI scheme in the context of $3 billion. I think the comment about quality, zero defect, and making world-class products is a very important aspect of the business, because if we have to export, we need to be competitive and also quality conscious. And there was an interesting comment made by the Secretary that there is a current mismatch in the demand supply, and that has caused some wrinkles and high prices, but he expects these to ease. And we are actually looking forward to some of the measures that he is planning to announce to reduce these tensions. So that will be a welcome move to the industry in the short run. I think the hydrogen topic is a very interesting topic. I think we debated it quite before the lunch session. And the direct support the government is planning to give for the initial projects, and so also for the electrolyzer, will actually take this industry to a new level. I think the more interesting comment was that if hydrogen production takes off to say 4 million tons as has been at least expected, while the industry has committed to around 25 million ton, and with each million ton requiring around 25 gigawatts, I think we are talking about at least 100 gigawatt addition in solar capacity or renewable energy capacity to meet this demand. This probably has also not been factored in, because that would mean that you need significantly higher domestic production and capacity, which is a good thing, because it will bring scale, economies of scale, and also bring down the cost of production, which is very interesting. I think the whole policy aspect has been nicely viewed in the form of the MSME also being supported by being taken care in the PLI scheme. At the end of the day, the ease of doing business has been a motto of the government of India, and we are happy to note that that is actually progressing very well. And last but not the least, I would say that the Honorable Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, Piyush Goyal ji just mentioned about energy security. This is actually a very hot topic right now all over the world, given the current tensions that exist. And the comment he made about equipment self-reliant, including manufacturing, is actually very, very important. And if we do all of these, I think achieving 500 gigawatt by 2030 and maintaining a circular economy within India is not a far-off dream. With that comments, I'd like to propose a vote of thanks to my distinguished panelists here. Thank you very much for all your time. Thank you.
कोई माइक देंगे इधर प्लीज?
Thank you very much. So nice of you. My name is Harish Kumar from Eureka Research Institute. We work on the climate change, renewable energy for sustainable development goal as a non-government organization in Rajasthan Alwar. My point is observation. First observation is so many buildings are there, rooftop scheme is there. Scheme is implemented, but so many roads, kilometers are there. Why not to develop the road top scheme in India? Road top scheme. The road can be engaged in the solar energy production that utilized for the mobility. Thousands of crores of rupees saved by the government. That leads to the climate change and economy of the country. Another point is that off-grid. We are a monument where there is the off-grid. Why not manufacturing in off-grid sector? Consumer items, toys, watches, clocks, so many things can be possible as an off-grid segment to be developed in India. So the Rajasthan, whole India become the topmost country in the whole world and a solar hub.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment or any observation? Share anything? Thank you. So with that, we come to a close of this session. Thank you very much for being with us. We are going to start with the next session right away. Thank you once again.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Renuka ma'am just said, we're going to be starting with the next session just right away. And as you can see, the stage is getting set. The days will be set in under a minute. I'm going to request you to please remain seated and not go anywhere. The next session is themed Energy Transition and Security, a Balancing Act. And I'm going to request you all, ladies and gentlemen, to please be here with us. Meanwhile, once again, I'd like to reiterate that the exhibition stalls are at the hard court area in the pool lawn, and if delegates would like to visit that after this session, please do join us. The basement of the hotel is where the hard court pool lawn is. So you'll have to go to the lobby first, and then closer to the convention hall is where you will find the exhibition area. Other than that, ISA is organizing a high-level conference on the 19th of October here itself at Hotel Ashok on the sidelines of ISA Assembly meeting. The conference will be attended by ISA member countries, private sector, eminent experts in academia. Delegates who wish to attend that, you can register yourself. Okay. And also tea, coffee will be served at your tables. May I request you to please take your teacups and be seated, ladies and gentlemen. We'll make sure that there's tea served on the tables. Can we begin now? Panelists here? Are the panelists here? Can we start? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. So, as I was saying, delegates who wish to attend the ISA's technical session on the 19th of October and have yet not registered for the ISA Assembly can still register for the 19th October technical conference by clicking the technical sessions link on isasolaralliance.org. Delegates can actually register and access the 19th October sessions without having to register for the 18th October session. So I'm going to request you, ladies and gentlemen, to please make a note of that. And these are going to be day-long technical sessions on the 19th of October. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be starting with a plenary session on energy transition and security, a balancing act. Let me begin by saying the amalgamation of energy security and the energy transition is an important one to watch out for in the 21st century. One does not trump the other, is what will be the toughest balancing act of our generation. Let's now hear from our panelists on this compelling theme. We are indeed very privileged to have in our midst, in fact, he's going to be joining us, our guest of honor, Shri Bhagwan Khuba ji, Minister of State for New and Renewable Energy and Chemical and Fertilizers, Government of India. So Shri Bhagwan Khuba, the Honorable Minister of State for New and Renewable Energy and Chemical and Fertilizers, Government of India, is going to be joining us shortly. Let me invite our esteemed dignitaries, Shri Lalit Bora, Joint Secretary, Solar, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. May I request you, sir, to kindly join us on the dais. Please help me welcome him on stage with a big round of applause. Welcome, sir. I'd like to invite, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vineet Mittal, once again, Co-Chairman, CI Renewable Energy Council and Chairman, Avada Group, to kindly grace the stage. He's going to be joining us in a bit. May I invite Dr. Hitesh Doshi, Chairman and Managing Director, Ware Energies. I'd like to now request Mr. Mohit Bhargav, Chief Executive Officer, Ntpc Renewable Energy Limited. Mr. Mohit Bhargava, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. The CEO of Ntpc Renewable Energy Limited. Welcome, sir. May I invite Mr. Mate Heis, Director, Global Affairs, Solar Power Europe. Let's welcome him on stage with a round of applause. Mr. Toru Kajiwara is going to be joining us a little late. He's the head of the Asia Pacific Region and Partnerships Division International Energy Agency. So he's going to be with us in a bit. And may I once again request Dr. Hitesh Doshi, Chairman and Managing Director of Ware Energies, to kindly grace the dais. Mr. Mohit Bhargava is here with us, ladies and gentlemen, on stage, the CEO of Ntpc Renewable Energy Limited. We also have with us the Joint Secretary, Solar, MNRE, Government of India, Shri Lalit Bora, gracing the dais, and Mr. Mate Heis, Director, Global Affairs, Solar Power Europe. And we're just awaiting the Honorable Guest of Honor. Like I said, Mr. Toru Kajiwara, the head of APAC and Partnerships Division, International Energy Agency, is going to be joining us very shortly. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Hitesh Doshi is also going to be joining us briefly. In the meantime, if I could request Shri Lalit Bora, the Joint Secretary of Solar with the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, to please render his special address. Once again, let's welcome him with a big round of applause to the podium. Sir, you can have your...
My colleagues on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. Before the minister comes, let me go through certain slides where we will just see how the renewable energy is doing the energy transition and what progress and what are our plans in the future. Is it visible? Yeah. As we know that the Sustainable Development Goal 7 defined by the UN Charter has put the lot of emphasis on ensuring that the access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and the modern energy should be provided to one and all by 2030. In order to achieve these targets, various indicators have been defined, and this was all before the pre-COVID era when all these indicators have been defined. When we come to India, the India's energy demand, if we see, it has almost doubled from 2000 to 2020. However, the percentage of biomass has been reducing, but the oil sector has almost maintained its share. Renewable has been growing at a steady phase, but the growth has been seen in last 2 years. Coal has been increasing, and when we go to the electricity consumption pattern or electricity demand pattern of India, we see that the electricity demand in India has been growing, and as per the CEA's predictions, the coming years we are going to have a demand of, our peak demand is going to increase by 5%, which will be one of the highest in the world. In order to achieve these targets, India has to go for the renewable way. India as of now is the third highest consumer of the electricity in the world, but when it comes to the per capita consumption, we are still 1/3 of the global average. So again, my electricity demand, and as per the CEA predictions, my total generated capacity by 2030 has to be somewhere around 841 gigawatt. It's a huge task, and in order to achieve this task, the renewable has to pitch in. And if we look at the target set by our Honorable Prime Minister, we have to achieve 500 gigawatt by 2030. So far, we are somewhere near 170 gigawatt. So in the coming 8 years, the target of 500 gigawatt is a big target. We will be achieving the net zero by 2070, and we intend to be the target energy independent by 2047. These are the snapshots of the achievements which we have done in last few years. Like we have been 163 gigawatt, and if we add the nuclear to this, which is about 6.8 gigawatt, we become 170 gigawatt in renewable capacity. My RE installed capacity has seen the 3 times growth in last 8 years if I exclude the large hydro. So that's mainly coming from the solar sector. We had an investment about $78 billion, and due to the market mechanism, I have achieved one of the lowest RE power. Like my solar power came at 1.99 per unit, which was about 2.5 cent, and wind was about 2.77. As of now, out of the 406 gigawatt, my RE capacity comes 170, which is more than the 40%, and 40% was the target which India gave for the NDC in the NDC to achieve by 2030, and we've achieved that 40% target in December 2021 itself, and we have increased our NDC target now to 50% of the total installed capacity. You can see that my solar contribution comes to about 59 gigawatt, and wind, which was initially leading the way, is now the 41 gigawatt. This is progress over the year we have made. In case of RE, if I include the large hydro, my growth has been almost 2 times since 2014, and my growth is about 3 times if I go without the large hydro. please.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help us welcome Shri Bhagwan Kuba, Minister of State for New and Renewable Energy and Chemical and Fertilizers, Government of India. Honorable Minister, thank you so much for taking the time out and being here with us. Thank you very much, sir.
Honorable Minister of State, sir, in your absence, we have just gone through the some introduction part where we have shown how the India is progressing in the RE sector. This slide shows that how the competitive bidding in India has resulted in the reduction in the RE prices. And we can see that in the year 2016-17, when bidding was introduced in the wind sector, the prices of wind reduced from 3.51 rupees to 2.43. Various policy interventions, regulatory framework interventions and institutional interventions was done by the Government of India to ensure that we move on a path of faster RE integration. On the regulatory framework, Electricity Act 2003, National Electricity Policy, Tariff Policy, Renewable Energy Certificate 2010 was introduced. Various state governments came out with their own policies and regulations to encourage the RE into the system. Standard bidding guidelines were issued. 100% foreign direct investment was permitted. The states were given the renewable power obligation trajectory to create a continuous demand for the renewable energy into the system. And in order to encourage, the interstate transmission service charges waiver was provided to all the RE sectors. And in order to achieve these targets and have the continuous flow of the equipments, the indigenous manufacturings have been encouraged by introducing the performance link incentive guarantee system. In order to provide a seamless financing, IRIDA was encouraged. Then RE implementation agencies, SECI, Ntpc, NHPCs were created, where the payment security mechanisms was introduced. And various research institutes like NICE, NIVE and NIBE were created and strengthened, so that in order to have a 500 gigawatt RE, we have a continuous flow of manpower as well as technological input to achieve these. So effectively, the India's energy transition was divided into 4 parts, where we have a sustained demand through the renewable power obligations. The DISCOM reforms were introduced through various schemes, where not only the distribution level system was strengthened, but also the transmission system was also strengthened. Green hydrogen and e-mobility, these are the factors which led to the continuous demand, and they are creating the continuous demand into the energy transition towards renewable. On the resource fund, land banks were created, solar parks were created, so that the developers have a plug and play facilities. Grid were strengthened, so that after generation, the electricities can have a smooth transmission, circular economy, just transmission, and waste and biomass tapping mechanisms, they were introduced. Various market mechanisms are also being introduced, or they are in the process of being done, like de-risking, market mode, carbon market. Policy visibilities were provided to the industries to develop the confidence, and ease of doing business was done. Through PLI, the manufacturing capacities are being strengthened. R&D institutes, including the RE institutes of the MNRE as well as the IITs, which are the premier institutes of the Indias, are encouraged to go into the research. Manpower developed through the Solar Mitra, Vayu Mitra schemes, so that we have a continuous flow of manpowers at the ground level, and innovative financing was introduced. In order to achieve these targets, various program interventions were also introduced. One of them was PM Kusum. The purpose of PM Kusum was to de-dieselize the agriculture sector. The agriculture sector, which consume about 13% of the diesel, was targeted, along with the barren lands which are of no use, were also encouraged to put the solar plants up to capacity of 2 megawatts. Solar park, as I explained, were introduced, and about 40 gigawatt of capacity has already been allotted. These parks were there where all the infrastructures were provided, and developer can just come and put their plant on a plug and play method. Rooftop solar schemes were introduced. Initially it was including all the sectors, and later on the rooftop scheme phase 2 was introduced, which was mainly concentrated on the residential rooftop. This scheme is also getting traction, and the purpose of the scheme was to see that the land or roof available on the factories, premises, residential areas are being used. Recently, to use the areas in the village area, the virtual net metering system has also been circulated, whereby the farmers or the villagers which does not have a pakka roof can go for the virtual net meterings. In case of wind, the ministry is in the process of coming out with the offshore wind strategies, and solar PLIs have been introduced. Coming to the energy security. So, access to electricity has been achieved by India, and it has been appreciated by the IEA, saying that the India is one of the rare countries which have achieved energy access at such a rapid phase. The affordability of electricity is being ensured by bundling of RE with the thermal, and encouraging the thermal plants which has the good efficiencies over the thermal plants which are not running at their proper efficiencies. Reliable and supply securities have been provided, and sustainability is being achieved through the energy transition. Apart from this, if we look at the energy security in a wider way, so renewable energy was one area which was introduced, and agriculture sector through PM Kusum is being targeted. The ethanol blending is another program where 20% of the ethanol blending target has been preponed from 2030 to 25-26. So this in effect is going to ensure that the India's dependence on the imported fuel reduces to some extent. One of the biggest consumer of the electricity and the diesel, which is Indian Railway, has been asked to set a target of 2030. So they are going in a massive electrifications, and they have to be net zero by 2030. This all looks good, but there are challenges, and the major challenges is the integration of RE with the grid. So far as India has a very strengthened one nation, one grid, which has the capacity to integrate the RE. However, there are limitations, and therefore efforts have started to increase the storage. And storage, as we all know, has their own challenges. So that is one area which we are working on, and we are seeing that now the storage are being brought at all three levels, like generation, transmission and consumptions. Similarly, the various technologies into the storage areas, including the pumped hydro, has to be increased. The challenges are big, the task is big, and we all have seen that post-COVID, there has been a sharp increase in the economic activities. However, due to the geopolitical problems, we have seen that the energy market is going through a bit disruptions. And it is very essential that we achieve an energy security. And to achieve energy security, India has more or less decided that we will go with 500 gigawatt, and we are sure that we will be able to achieve the 500 gigawatt by 2030. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to request Dr. Hitesh Doshi, Chairman and Managing Director, Waaree Energies, to now please make his address. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Hitesh Doshi.
Thank you very much, respected Kovaji, Goraji, and all the dignitaries. Good afternoon to all of you. I think before I start, I would like to remember my mentor, or you can say the available 24/7 to me, Tulsi Bhai. And he had been my guide all the time for renewables, because the only person, sir, I saw who has not started the manufacturing in India, but globally he became the first Indian global renewable energy equipment manufacturer. So on the today's topic, sir, about the Indian manufacturing, personally I have been in a manufacturing from 2007, very early days. And on behalf of Waaree, I would like to first thank you, ISA and CII, for giving this opportunity. This year, we are gathered for this 5th edition of the International Solar Alliance. And the same is around the energy, this time, when we are talking about the energy access issues, transition issues, and most importantly, the energy security issues. And this is really the right time at the right place this conference has been organized. We all know the energy prices, how they are going, and of course it has impacted a lot on the solar side also. The cost of the solar panels, due to the lot of commodity prices and the other products prices, they have gone up, and it has little bit slowed the deployment. But I'm sure now, understanding this real energy war, we will be able to start our deployment much faster than what it has been. We believe on the India side as energy security, and the dominance which we have been hearing since in the morning has to be stopped. And with the government schemes in India, the various policies, and particularly the most important ALMM, we are sure that we will see around 40,000 of the solar module production in India before the end of the March next year. And end of the December, I believe that, sir, we will reach 1 lakh megawatt module production in this country. And today also, the largest plant in India which are getting built now and which will be operational, they will be the largest outside the China in terms of the manufacturing, and we'll see the production in coming 2 to 3 months. For us, so the most important is to start on the polysilicon side, and that will be the, I think PLI will bring in this country, and we are quite confident about it. As per the IEA, India Energy Outlook is the primary energy supply mix, and we heard our Honorable Minister this morning that this will be over a 65%, which is today on the fossil fuel. So as a manufacturer and all the manufacturers on behalf of, I would like to commit that India will provide a China plus one solution to the globe. Indian solar manufacturing is ramping up, and this will help for the hydrogen and the batteries also in the coming days. We in India, the biggest challenge we are seeing today for the manufacturing sector is where all the ministries come together and see how the manufacturing is focused. The way we have done, sir, for the development of the solar power, if this can be addressed, that will help us a lot. So thank you very much, sir, and we are looking forward to see this 1 lakh megawatt manufacturing facility in a less than a year in this country. Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for the industry perspective, I invite to the podium Mr. Mohit Bhargava, Chief Executive Officer, Ntpc Renewable Energy Limited. Please help me welcome Mr. Mohit Bhargava, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, most respected Minister, sir, my fellow panelists on the dais. First of all, thanks CII for having me here. Of course, thanks MNRE too. I wasn't able to join the deliberations earlier, but I believe they would have been quite useful and will help keep the wheels of the RE sector moving even faster. It's kind of interesting that the organizers have titled this session Energy Transition and Security Balancing Act. I think that's what is the paper in front of me. Honestly, I don't see any need for balancing, and I don't really see any dichotomy in energy security and energy transition. These are two sides of the same coin. Energy transition cannot happen without energy security, and similarly, energy security cannot happen without energy transition. It's good to have two people from IEA and Solar Europe who will probably be sharing their perspective on how Europe is facing up to these issues. But I believe the challenges being faced by them are somehow being played up as an either-or situation between energy security and energy transition. I can only say that a lot of their energy transition perspective, which we have only been seeing as a third party, were premised on using natural gas as a transition fuel, which incidentally was not they were producing themselves. Now that natural gas supply, unlimited, cheap, is under stress, that is where they're facing the issues. But this is where it's important to note that what India has been doing all through on energy transition and charting out our roadmap was never an either-or situation. It's like a shining example as to what needs to be done. Mr. Lalit Bora shared some of the numbers of what CA proposes to do, about 800 odd gigawatts, more than half of which would be coming from non-fossil sources. It was also important to remember that there's still a significant number on the coal side. And not because we don't want to move on energy transition, but to ensure that energy security is also there. We cannot have energy not available to our people. So while we have been chugging along at a hectic pace on the RE side, I think Mr. Bora said we have done some 3x numbers in a very short span of time on the RE side. It's important to understand that that has not been at the expense of coal, it has been in addition to coal. So even as we are looking at a tremendous growth on the coal side, on the energy demand side, it's all hands on deck kind of situation. It's to to the government's credit that they never, removed the eye from the ball. They ensured that the availability of energy, and here I'm talking more energy, more in terms of electricity, was ensured availability of in copious amounts. So if we have to look at what are the resources India needs to leverage, for us it's very simple. Energy security has to be based on resources which are based on Aatmanirbharta, where we don't have to look at countries outside India for our energy dependence, for our energy security. Which is why for us, while solar, wind, and now offshore wind, these are very important as we transition to energy security. It's also important to keep in mind that coal will remain one of the important fuels as we move forward. And this is also very clearly brought out in the net zero target which India set for ourselves of 2070. It's probably not out of place to mention that energy security is not limited to power sector alone. It will ultimately cover all the sectors, whether it's the steel, all the energy intensive sectors like steel, cement, refining, fertilizer, aviation, shipping, all of these have to transition. And this is where the power of RE through green hydrogen or green ammonia will become even more important, that the whole country transitions to possibly a net zero, situation by 2070 or even before that. I mean, just a point of reference as we talk about energy transition. Well, the generation demand has grown by almost 10% this year, and these are like daily numbers. The growth of electricity has seen an uptick of almost 10% this year. What's important to note is that the RE, the share of RE in this has increased by 2%. So we are on track. When we have committed to a 2030 target of having a certain number of RE, more than 50% in installed capacity, that will happen. But we are also keen to ensure that in energy terms also, RE becomes an important component of how we are meeting the requirements. I'll probably take a few minutes to talk about what Ntpc is doing on the energy transition side. For those of you who may not be fully aware, we are the largest power generating company in India. We have an installed capacity of 70 gigawatts, out of which almost 55 gigawatts is coal-based capacity. So we have actually embarked on one of the most ambitious energy transition exercises of large-size entities across the world, I would assume. In the next 10 years, what we are planning to do is to create a renewable capacity of 60 gigawatts, which would probably be equal to our coal-based capacity at that point of time, or almost equal to the coal-based capacity at that point of time. So that is the central pillar of how Ntpc would transition from where it is today by 2030, 2032. But then there are other important pillars too. So we'll be doing RE, of course. We'll be doing green hydrogen and its derivatives. We're also looking very, very closely to convert our fuel sources to green. Today, we fire a large amount of coal. So as probably you're aware, we have actually gone to the market to source biomass-based pellets for firing into our boilers. We already placed orders for about 4.8 million tons of these pellets so far. We did this exercise and we found that we can actually fire close to 10% of pellets in our same boilers without any modification. So that will actually help green our fuel sources. We also recently entered into MOU with Siemens, GE, and MHI to look at the possibility of firing hydrogen along with natural gas in our gas turbines. We're also doing a pilot to convert municipal solid waste into green charcoal. If that we are successful, and we are very close to doing that, that can be fired very easily, and it's like helping two things: take care of municipal solid waste and replace charcoal or coal by green charcoal. And of course, this doesn't mean that we are taking our focus away from energy efficiency and energy conservation. So that will remain one of the key pillars as well. we realized that Ntpc was set up with a clear objective of rapidly supplementing power generation capacity in the country. We believe we have not only done that, but we have also proactively charted an energy transition roadmap for ourselves. So we shall continue to be the backbone of energy security for India and shall transition along the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That was the industry perspective, ladies and gentlemen, from Mr. Mohit Bhargava. And now for the international perspective, let me first invite Mr. Mate Hayes, Director, Global Affairs, Solar Power, Europe. Let's welcome him with a big round of applause. Mr. Mate Hayes, ladies and gentlemen.
Honorable Minister, distinguished panelists, dear guests. So first of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to speak at today's important conference. Indeed, the topics that we are addressing here today are very important in Europe as well. So as mentioned, my name is Mate Hayes. I'm Director of Global Affairs at Solar Power Europe. And so Solar Power Europe is the association that represents the solar industry in Europe. We are an association that has about 300 members covering the entire value chain, from raw material suppliers, equipment manufacturers, through utilities, developers, investors, service providers, and also companies from neighboring segments. And we are also a federation of national associations representing industries in member states of the European Union. So we also have a globally active membership. So our membership covers many of the leading international, multinational companies, investors, and manufacturers as well. But we are a European association, so over 90% of our members are European companies. So much about us, Solar Power Europe. Now, when it comes to today's topic, secure, resilient, and sustainable solar supply chains, I want to speak about two important topics that we are focusing on in Europe. We're focusing on these topics as Solar Power Europe, as the association, together with our partners from the industry, but also these topics are also policy priorities. These topics have been taken up and prioritized by the European Commission and also by governments of the EU's member states. Supply chain monitoring, by which I mean supply chain sustainability, supply chain transparency, and supply chain diversification. Let's start with the second one, supply chain diversification. Of course, a very important element of which is manufacturing. And here are the two aspects that we're talking about, is reshoring solar manufacturing to Europe. Many of you know that 10 to 15 years ago, Europe was a leader in solar manufacturing. This is not the case anymore. But now there is a political will to reshore manufacturing, and with the ambition, with the objective to establish 30 gigawatt worth of manufacturing capacity across the supply chain, from polysilicon to modules. So 30 gigawatt for each step of the solar silicon panel value chain. And this is an official objective put forward by the European Commission as part of the Repower EU objective. And this Repower EU package also establishes a so-called European Solar Industry Alliance. And Solar Power Europe, so my association, is part of the steering committee of this alliance, which is currently being operationalized and which will develop tools to make this happen. And yes, admittedly, other major players on the global stage like India, the United States, obviously China, are more advanced on implementing incentives to support solar manufacturing, but Europe is following closely as well. And then obviously the global diversification. In Europe, at Solar Power Europe, we are very much in favor of redeveloping and developing solar manufacturing capacities in other countries and regions, such as India. And so we believe that it's also very important to join forces and to cooperate on this. So specifically on solar manufacturing between the EU and India, for example, we've already been talking to our partners from India, to the EU delegation in India to identify opportunities to create joint ventures possibly, but also to strengthen research and innovation cooperation. And we think that, for example, this opportunity should be taken into account in the context of things such as the ongoing EU-India Free Trade Agreement negotiations, which presents an opportunity to strengthen links between the EU and India on manufacturing. Now, the other thing is supply chain sustainability. So in the EU, but not only in the EU, in the United States as well, stakeholders and policymakers have been increasingly requiring higher and higher sustainability and due diligence measures, and introducing such requirements for solar companies in order to comply with, and in order to make sure that solar products imported to the European Union comply with very high sustainability standards, ESG standards, so environmental, social, and governance standards. And it is in this context that we at Solar Power Europe, we've been prioritizing sustainability very much as well. And just a couple of weeks ago, we launched a very important initiative, which is called the Solar Stewardship Initiative, which is a new solar supply chain sustainability assurance program that will help to deliver these goals in Europe and in the world. So this Solar Stewardship Initiative, or short, the SSI, is already supported by over 50 leading organizations from across the value chain. So this includes both leading international developers, investors, utilities, as well as leading suppliers of solar equipment, and also some major development finance institutions. And so what are the core objectives of the Solar Stewardship Initiative? Obviously, as mentioned, to deliver the requirements of our community in terms of sustainability and ESG standards, to ensure that the energy transition is just, inclusive, and respects human rights, and it will operationalize all this. So it will establish mechanisms to create supply chain transparency on materials and components origin, and ensure integrity in the global solar industry. And so it will also enable continuous improvement of ESG performance, and obviously build the confidence of regulators, policymakers, customers, business partners in the sustainability, in terms of sustainability in the solar supply chain. And I already mentioned the upcoming laws. In the United States, there are already existing laws that limit the access to certain components. The European Union has 2 ongoing legislative initiatives which the solar industry needs to prepare for. And the Solar Stewardship Initiative will help the solar industry to prepare for these things. And so my last slide is about the next steps for the SSI. Because this is a work in progress, and of course such an ambitious initiative cannot be delivered from one day to the other. So we just announced the initiative a couple of weeks ago, and in October we will start with pilot assessments conducted on different sites between now basically and Q1 2023. This will include on-site audits in the factories of some of the main manufacturers and suppliers along the solar value chain. And we will also conduct a multi-stakeholder consultation on the SSI Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct is a document that defines the ESG requirements that participants and adherents will have to comply with. And then next year we will work on a governance for the SSI, and of course a grievance mechanism as well. We hope to be able to publish the final set of documents post-stakeholder consultation in November, and we're planning to start the full market rollout of the SSI assurance scheme as of December 2023. And so those of you who are interested in this, I invite you to contact me after the session, write me an email, or talk to me in the coffee break. Very happy to tell you more about this. Thank you, and if you want to learn more, then visit the website of the Solar Stewardship Initiative, which is solarstewardshipinitiative.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayes, for that perspective. And now may I request Mr. Toru Kajiwara, the Head of APAC and Partnerships Division with the International Energy Agency, IEA. Please help me welcome Mr. Toru Kajiwara, ladies and gentlemen, for the international perspective. Welcome, sir.
Okay. So I can just... Honorable guests and the ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me to share the IEA's perspective today on global solar PV supply chains, which is based on our special dedicated report published last July. I start with the good news globally, and that is over the last decade, global solar PV cumulative capacity increased by 10 times and will surpass 1 terawatt by the end of this year. This is a critical milestone and huge success for the industry and the whole sector. China's industrial policy and massive investment has been instrumental in this. As you know, Chinese policies have enabled economies of scale and supported innovation across the supply chain, resulting in 80% cost declines and helping solar PV to become the cheapest electricity generation source globally. And also to explain another examples, China's industrial policy and massive investment has been instrumental, and this was a strategic choice of the Chinese government. The value of China's solar PV exports was over $30 billion last year, and solar accounted for almost 7% of the country's total net trade surplus. However, the extent of concentration in global supply chain and raw material supply also creates potential challenges going forward. According to the IEA's analysis, the current China's share in all PV manufacturing stages, i.e. from polysilicon, ingots, and wafers to cell and modules, exceeds 80%, i.e. more than double its share in global PV demand. And in our analysis, if things do not change, the world would almost completely rely over 95% on China for the supply of polysilicon wafers and for solar panel production through 2025. And then you see also the concentration just in terms of single provinces and then also single plant here in this chart. And also, we see the high concentration in raw material supply, and as shown in the graph, the rapid PV demand increasing for key minerals, competition with other clean energy technologies, and long-term terms for mining projects increase the risk of supply and demand mismatches. This level of concentration in any global supply chain and raw material supply would represent considerable vulnerability, and solar PV is not exception. So what is the solution to these challenges? The key word is diversification. Diversification can offer multiple economic and environmental opportunities and while reducing supply chain vulnerability and risks. How does this happen? So we can look for, first, huge global opportunities for solar. In our analysis, the meeting global climate goals will require more than doubling of global solar PV manufacturing capacity through 2030. And new manufacturing facilities could attract 120 billion by 2030 and create 500,000 new sustainable manufacturing jobs globally. Here, IEA identifies 5 key policy action areas to ensure solar PV security and supply. The first is to diversify raw material supplies and manufacturing. And second, de-risk manufacturing investment. The third, ensure environmental and social sustainability, and continue to foster information and develop and strengthen recycling capabilities. And good news is that new policies focusing on domestic manufacturing in the United States, India, and European Union, which could significantly contribute to diversification of solar supply chain over the midterms. The first, the IEA welcomes and praises India's production-linked incentives and its very ambitious target to boost the country's solar PV industries. IEA's preliminary assessment also indicates that the Inflation Reduction Act can boost, in the US, can boost the gigawatt-scale manufacturing facilities in the United States. Finally, the European Solar PV Industrial Alliance and other initiatives launched within the recent REPower Europe policy package, as explained earlier, has the ambition to go faster to a 20 gigawatt per year production by 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is facing a truly first global energy crisis in terms of prices and security. All countries and technologies are affected. The position of the IEA is clear. A massive surge in investment to attract clean energy transition is a lasting solution for both energy security and climate crisis. Dedicated energy and industrial policies targeting investment in well-diversified solar PV supply chains are essential to make our journey to net zero a secure one. Last, since we are talking under this topic of the energy transition and security, is as a balancing act, I would like to share with you a little bit of purview of what our upcoming World Energy Outlook look like, which will be published with the 27th of October this month. It is a particularly difficult time of the world, and we're outlining the 2 key messages, or 3 key messages. The one is the need to refocus on energy securities and to pay particular attention to this balancing act of the energy transition and energy security. Related to this is the latest technology development and innovation trends, in particular focused on clean energy supply chains and the need to diversify them towards a new centers of manufacturing, such as India. And last and finally, most important, investment needs and financial flows. In particular, the looming clean energy investment gap in developing economies, which needs to be bridged by stronger cooperation and support from advanced economies. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again, Mr. Kajiwara. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I must say the Honorable Minister, Shri Bhagwan Khubaji, the Minister of State for New and Renewable Energy and Chemical and Fertilizers, Government of India, is known for his extraordinary leadership and provides a very vital link between clean energy and hard-to-abate sectors such as chemicals and fertilizers. We are indeed privileged to have him in our midst. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Shri Bhagwan Khubaji, Honorable Minister of State for New and Renewable Energy and Chemical and Fertilizers, Government of India. Namaskar, sir.
third edition of International Conference and Exhibition on Pathways for Global Partnership in Green Energy, Powering India and the World. मंच पर उपस्थित श्री मोहित भार्गव जी, मेट हैन जी, तोरो किंजवार, ललित भोरा जी और इस सभागृह में उपस्थित सभी सोलार एनर्जी के संबंधित में सभी एक्सपर्ट्स, मैन्युफैक्चरर्स, अधिकारी वर्ग और माध्यम के मित्रों, नॉन फॉसिल फ्यूल्स एनर्जी समय की मांग है। फॉसिल फ्यूल्स की एनर्जी को लेकर के दुनिया में बढ़ती हुआ आबादी और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग और कंजम्पशन डिमांड और कार्बन जनरेशन, ये सारे चीज़ों को मद्देनज़र रखते हुए एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी भी चाहिए, साथ में फूड सिक्योरिटी भी चाहिए और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग की जो अलार्मिंग है उसको कैसे कम करें। इसी के लिए आज समय की मांग है फॉसिल फ्यूल्स टू नॉन फॉसिल फ्यूल एनर्जी जनरेट करना और देश और दुनिया को इसका पूर्ति करना हम सबकी जिम्मेदारी बन चुकी है। देखिए, इस साल दीपावली आया, लेकिन बदलते हुआ मौसम, अभी भी बरसात कमी नहीं हुई। कारण जो ग्लोबल वार्मिंग के बदलते हुआ उसी के कारण हवामान में उतार चढ़ाव के कारण अनेक दुर्घटनाएं घट रही हैं। तो आज इस समय की मांग की ओर नॉन फॉसिल फ्यूल एनर्जी, वो विंड हो, सोलार हो, ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन हो, वेस्ट टू एनर्जी हो, ये सारों को हम जितने हो सका उतना उसमें इनोवेशन करें, एफिशिएंसी बढ़ाए, उसी के साथ कैपेसिटी भी बढ़ाए, तभी जाकर के बढ़ती हुई डिमांड को हम पूरी करने की संभावना बढ़ जाती है। बोराजिनो भारत सरकार MNRE ने जो सरकार का निर्णय किया, जो पॉलिसी जरूरत के हिसाब से पॉलिसी बनाई, उसी के कारण माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का लक्ष्य 2022 तक 175 गीगावाट की नॉन फॉसिल फ्यूल की एनर्जी का जो लक्ष्य भारत ने कर पाया। COP26 के अंदर माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी बड़ी एम्बिशियस टारगेट देश के सामने रखा है, करीब 500 गीगावाट बाय 2030 तक। तो निश्चित रूप में भारत सरकार MNRE डिपार्टमेंट उस ओर कदम बढ़ा के लक्ष्य पाने के लिए कार्यपथ पर चल रहा है। आज भारत सरकार की जो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने लक्ष्य दिया था, नॉन फॉसिल फ्यूल्स एनर्जी 500 गीगावाट by 2030, energy requirements through renewable energy 50% by 2030, carbon emission reduction 1 billion unit by 2030, carbon intensity reduction 45% by 2030 और कार्बन न्यूट्रल by 2070। इसी दिशा में भारत सरकार by 33% कार्बन इंटेंसिटी रिडक्शन करने का जो था 33 to 35% by 2035%, हमने अभी तक 45% तक हमने लक्ष्य रखा है। और इलेक्ट्रिसिटी रिक्वायरमेंट थ्रू आरई पहला 40% था, तो अभी हमने 50% तक को हमने बढ़ाया है। नेशनल ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन मिशन, अभी मिशन डॉक्यूमेंट कई दिनों के अंदर भारत सरकार उसको पब्लिश करेगी। और भारत में विंड एनर्जी का पोटेंशियल करीब 695 गीगावाट एट 120 मीटर्स हाइट पे आएगी। ऑफशोर विंड 70 गीगावाट पोटेंशियल, तमिलनाडु के अंदर 35 गीगावाट और गुजरात के अंदर 35 गीगावाट, और 4 गीगावाट ऑफशोर टेंडर हमने ऑलरेडी फ्लोट किया है। सोलर इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी आज तक 58 गीगावाट की हो चुकी है। बाय 2030 तक 280 गीगावाट की हमने अंदाज किया है। नेशनल प्रोग्राम ऑन हाई एफिशिएंसी ऑफ सोलर मॉड्यूल्स, दैट इज पॉलीसिलिकॉन इनगॉट्स वेफर सेल्स एंड मॉड्यूल्स, अबाउट 9 गीगावाट कैपेसिटी, करीब 4,500 करोड़ की हमने ऑलरेडी LOI इश्यू किया है और 3 एजेंसियां उसके ऊपर काम कर रहे हैं। और भारत सरकार 2022-23 का बजट के लिए करीब 19,500 करोड़ की उसके अनुदान की बजट के अंदर उन्होंने अप्रूव किया है। तो आने वाला दिनों में उसको PLI स्कीम्स में जोड़ करके करीब देश की कैपेसिटी हो जाएगी 65 गीगावाट कैपेसिटी प्रति वर्ष। करीब 94,000 करोड़ इन्वेस्टमेंट भारत में लगेगी और इंपोर्ट सब्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ करीब 1.37 करोड़ आएगी और डायरेक्ट जॉब 1.95 लाख जॉब्स और इनडायरेक्ट जॉब्स 8 लाख जॉब्स लगेगी। ऐसे करके भारत सरकार माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का दूरदृष्टित्व, लक्ष्य और उनका नेतृत्व, निर्णय करने का क्षमता, ये सारे चीज़ों को लेकर के रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी के अंदर देश को जितना ज़रूरी है एनर्जी उतना सप्लाई करना भी है और विश्व के लिए भी वो हमें क्या कर सकते हैं उस संभावना को भी पूरा करने का भारत प्रयास करेगी। इसी के साथ मेरा 2 बात मैं समाप्त करता हूँ। आप सबको मेरा शुभकामनाएं।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर आपका। Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let me now invite Ms. Jyoti Mukul, Principal, Energy and Infrastructure, Confederation of Indian Industry, to kindly come and render the vote of thanks. Please help me welcome the lady with a big round of applause, Ms. Jyoti Mukul, ladies and gentlemen.
Honorable Minister Shri Bhagwan Kubaji, he took us through the dangers of climate change, which countries like India have already started witnessing in terms of heavy rains, untimely rains, which cause both economic loss as well as social loss to the population. India has also taken lead in the CDRI, which is the focusing on disaster resilient infrastructure globally, and is working together with small island nations on this important aspect of how do you contain the economic and social loss due to the climate change factors. The Minister also took us through how renewable energy could be incorporated, why it is no more a subject just of discussion, but of a real necessity, the employment opportunities it can create, and also what the Indian government has done to promote renewable energy. I would like to thank you, sir, and also inform you that in the morning, the Union Minister for Power, New and Renewable Energy, Shri R.K. Singh ji, also raised the important issue of climate justice. And in his speech, he mentioned how it has to be an equitable responsibility holding by all nations. We had various sessions on green hydrogen, manufacturing, and now in this important session, the speakers deliberated on how energy transition can be smooth, the various issues involved in it. I would thank you for coming and joining us, and I also thank all other panelists who took us through how the international economies are dealing with this subject of introduction of renewable energy into the mainstream. Rather, in India, I would say it has become already a mainstream, except that we still need to do some little bit of tightening so that coal does not stay much in, cannot disrupt our power systems, and we continue to rely more on renewable energy. With these words, I would like to thank all the panelists and all the delegates for being part of these exciting discussions today, and for the information of all delegates, I would like to mention that the report released today, the CII report released today in the morning by the Honorable Minister, Shri R.K. Singh ji, would be available online for downloading from tomorrow onwards on CII website. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Ma'am, please join us for the group photograph. I'll hold that. Thank you very much once again, ladies and gentlemen, for being an integral part of today. This conference today comes to an end, but do permit me to make some pertinent announcements before you go. Thank you very much to the eminent panelists once again. Namaskar. Thank you so much. Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, once again I'd like to remind you that ISA, the International Solar Alliance, is organizing a high-level conference on the 19th of October at Hotel Ashoka on the sidelines of the ISA Assembly meeting. The conference will be attended by ISA member countries, private sector, eminent experts and academia. Delegates who would like to attend the Indian Solar Alliance's technical session on 19th October but have not registered for the ISA Assembly or can still register for the 19th October technical sessions alone by clicking the technical session link isasolaralliance.org. Delegates can register and access the 19th of October sessions without actually registering for the 18th of October sessions. For technical sessions of day after, which is October 19, delegates have the option to attend the session in person as well as online. I'd also like to inform you, ladies and gentlemen, that we still have at the Heart Court the exhibition stalls. Now that the conference is over, I would request and urge you to please take a look at the exhibition stalls that are there at the hangar of the hotel, which is basically close to the convention hall. All you have to do is go to the basement of the hotel. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, once again for being an integral part of this conference. Thank you very much.